Welcome to the Therapist HQ, your weekly pep talk for private practice pros. Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to the Therapist HQ. I'm your host, Alicia, and as always, I am really glad that you're here today because this is an episode that I have been wanting to do for a while. We are talking about insurance panels, specifically the real cost of going in network and what I just wish that more therapists knew before they said yes. If you've been here for a while or if you're new here, I feel like it's important to say that one thing about me is I'm a big advocate for running your practice however works best for you. And so when it comes to things that I have my own opinion on, such as insurance panels, what I like to do is make sure that people are making an informed decision on what's best for them. So I want to make sure that everybody has the information that they need to make educated and informed decision. And just here to remind you that you can always change your mind. You can always go back on a decision you've made and to go a different path. So, with all of that being said, before we get into it, let's do a little catch up first. As many people know, I'm preparing to take a couple weeks off out of office for a quick little medical jaunt. And the preparation has been very time consuming, both personally and work wise. I am very type A personality, and I have really been working hard to plan ahead and button as many things up as possible, just so that, especially for that first week and part of that second week, I can really disconnect as much as a business owner can. I think that the practice is actually a little bit easier to disconnect from because I have so much admin help. I have a virtual assistant, I have a biller. My therapists that work with me are literally perfection. Everybody just runs really well and works really great as a team. And so that actually, I know confidently can run without me. As far as Therapist HQ goes, I am a one-woman show. And so just working to get caught up and ahead on as many things as possible and just to make it as good of a recovery experience for myself as possible. But we are getting there and we are almost in the single digits as far as when that is coming up. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, I have a surgery in, I believe, 10 days. So that is something. Anywho, before we get into the main topic for today, I want to share something that has been on my mind because it directly connects to what we're going to be talking about today. So, back in May of 2025, so last year, the federal government, the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, Treasury, all these important bodies, right? They announced that they would not be enforcing the new mental health parity regulations that were finalized under the previous administration, under the Biden administration. And I just want to take a second to explain what this actually means, because obviously this just sounds like a bunch of words put together. And like, what does this mean? How does this affect us? Because although it's a little in the weeds, it does still matter. So the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, see, it's a mouthful, has been around since 2008. The basic idea is that insurance companies are supposed to treat mental health coverage the same way they treat coverage for physical health conditions. So same standards, same access, same oversight. And in 2024, the government finalized updated rules that were supposed to close a lot of the loopholes that insurance companies had been using to get around this and essentially not do it. And then in May of last year, the current administration said, we're actually not going to enforce those new rules. And so, what this means for you and I as therapists in private practice is that right now, insurance companies are operating with less regulatory pressure to treat mental health care fairly than they were supposed to be and they previously were. So, the older rules from like 2013 are still technically in effect, but the stronger protections are not being enforced. And so, this is the environment that we are practicing in while we have this conversation today. And I'm certainly not saying this to scare you or to make you feel hopeless. I'm saying it because it's just important context. When we talk about the real cost of going in network, we're not talking about a system that's moving in therapist's favor right now, right? We're talking about a system where you need to be clear-eyed about what you're signing on to and up for. So let's talk about it, my friends, shall we? I want to be upfront about where I'm coming from with this episode. Like I kind of alluded to in the beginning, this is not an anti insurance episode. I am genuinely not here to tell you that taking insurance is always wrong or that the therapists who do it are making a mistake. There are real reasons people join panels, and there are real clients whose access to care depends on it. And I want to honor that. What I want to do for you is for you to make this decision with complete information because, in my experience, a lot of therapists are joining panels without fully understanding what they're actually agreeing to. And then they spend years wondering why the math never seems to work out, why there's so many delays in them getting paid, and really wondering like how to untangle themselves from these companies. So let's start with the numbers that most therapists may not know going into this. According to the 2025 A Financial State of Private Practice report, the average private pay rate for individual therapy was $159 per session. The average insurance reimbursement rate was $111. That's a $48 difference and a 36% reduction in what you're earning for the same exact hour of work with the same clinical skill and the same expertise. And if you run that across a full caseload, let's say even 20 clients a week, you're looking at roughly $1,000 less per week compared to private pay. That's close to $48,000 a year, you guys. And Medicare reimbursement rates for mental health services actually decreased by about 14% in 2025 compared to the year prior. So for some therapists, the gap is even wider than that. But honestly, the reimbursement rate is only the beginning of this story when it comes to accepting insurance versus not. The part that doesn't show up in those numbers is some hidden costs that go along with this. And this is where I want to spend some time because I think these are the costs that catch a lot of therapists off guard. The first one, which is a very important one to me, is time. Insurance billing is certainly not passive or easy income. Every claim that you submit has to be documented, coded, and followed up on. And when claims get denied, which happens more than most people realize, about half of therapists on insurance panels experience at least one denial in a given year. You have to appeal. That appeal process takes real time, unpaid time, time that you are not able to be in session, not resting, not working on your business. And that time has a dollar value that really never gets factored into the fee schedule that you're agreeing to when signing on to these insurance companies. Then, of course, there's the administrative weight of just staying compliant. Each insurance company has its own requirements, its own timelines, its own systems. CPT codes, modifiers, prior authorizations, coordination of benefits. If you're handling this yourself, it becomes a part time job inside your already full time job in practice. And if you hire a biller to handle it, that cost comes out of the money that insurance company was already paying you less for than your private pay rate. There's also something called a clawback. If you're not familiar with this term, that's probably a good thing, but I really do want you to know about it. So, a clawback is when an insurance company comes back to you, sometimes months or even years after a session. I know, years. And demands money back. Maybe there was a billing error, maybe a client's eligibility changed on a specific date, maybe an audit flagged something. And the amount can be significant. As far as I know, there's no caps or ceilings as to what an insurance company can come back for in terms of a clawback. I have heard from therapists that I know who have received clawback notices for thousands of dollars completely out of nowhere. And if your practice is already running on a tight margin, which many insurance based practices and even early private pay practices are, precisely because of the reimbursement rates, a clawback can genuinely be destabilizing. Another thing that I learned about these clawbacks from a colleague that actually had this happen to them was that if she wasn't able to pay back the clawback, they essentially were going to hold on to any future payments until she met that clawback amount. So, what this means is she had other clients on her caseload with the specific insurance. And so, if she continued to see those clients with that specific insurance, she would not see a single dollar from those sessions because those session reimbursements would be going to pay off her clawback. So this leaves her in a precarious situation, right? Does she essentially abandon her clients and refer them out because she can no longer utilize that insurance? Or does she continue seeing them so they have this continuity of care, knowing that she won't see a single dollar from these sessions until the insurance company has recouped thousands of dollars of fees? It really puts a therapist in a horrible position, if you ask me, where both answers are pretty catastrophic, in my opinion. So, outside of clawbacks, there is one more cost that doesn't necessarily have a dollar amount, but I think it actually might be one of the most significant one of all, especially because this is a huge reason that we go into private practice, which is clinical autonomy. When you're in network with an insurance company, you're not fully operating on your own terms anymore. Your clients may have session limits. You're required to provide a diagnosis that goes on their record, which, by the way, you usually have to do after the first session. And this can affect things like their insurance rates down the line, their ability to get life insurance, and in some fields, even their employment, which obviously I do not agree with, but this is just the precedent that insurance companies have set forth. And a third party also gets to review your notes and weigh in on whether the care you're providing is medically necessary. I think those who take insurance or have taken insurance historically probably cringe at that term, medically necessary, because insurance loves to use that. You have earned your license and you have done thousands of supervised hours. And some layperson at an insurance company who has never met your clients has standing to question your clinical judgment. That's a real thing that happens, and it's just worth knowing about before you sign up. There's one more piece that I want to name because I don't think it gets talked about enough. When your income is capped by what an insurance company will reimburse and you can't raise your rate, and the only way to earn more is to see more clients, that kind of math can push you into a really unsustainable caseload. And an unsustainable caseload obviously leads to burnout, usually. A lot of therapists don't connect their burnout to their billing model, but the connection is absolutely real. Sometimes in moments like that, it's easier to see, well, yeah, I have a high caseload, and so that's causing me burnout. But we have to dig a layer deeper of why do we have such a high caseload? Is it out of a need? Is it out of a want? Is it out of a desire to serve more? Or is it out of a desire of survival because these reimbursement rates aren't technically sustainable or livable for the work that we're doing? And since we are talking all things insurance and decision making, is sort of the perfect time to talk about today's sponsor, Mentaya. So, as we've been talking about, you shouldn't have to choose between charging what you're worth and keeping your clients in care. But that can sometimes be the impossible position that a lot of out of network therapists find themselves in. Mentaya was built to change that. It's a platform that helps your clients get reimbursed by their insurance for out of network sessions up to 80% back. Mentaya submits the claims automatically, follows up on denials, and guarantees reimbursement or your client's money back. Here's what this means: you get your full private pay rate and your clients get access to care. Truly, everybody wins. You can start your free 30-day trial with code TherapistHQ at mentaya.com. The benefits checker is normally $29 a month, but yours is going to be free for 30 days at mentaya.com, code TherapistHQ. Now, I want to be fair because there are genuine reasons that therapists choose to go in network, and I don't want to gloss over them. The clearest one is access. When you take insurance, you make therapy available to people who maybe couldn't otherwise afford it. And that matters a lot. The mental health system in this country has very real gaps, and the therapists who take insurance are often filling a gap that the system itself should be filling, but isn't. That's a genuine value and a value that I respect and try to adhere to very deeply. There's also the practical benefit of a more consistent referral stream, especially when you're just starting out. For a new practice trying to build a caseload, being on panels can help fill your schedule so much faster than building from scratch on private pay alone. That stability has real value in the early stages, and Not all panels are created equal. Some panels actually do pay reasonably well depending on the panel and the state that you're in. Rates do vary significantly by insurance company, by state, and in some markets, certain panels are genuinely worth it from certain ones that I've seen. The question is whether the rate you'd actually get for the specific panel in your specific state is sustainable when you factor in everything we just talked about. So, how do you actually make that decision? Here's how I like to think about it. Before you say yes to any panel, you have to be doing the actual math. Don't just look at the per session rate, calculate your effective hourly rate after you factor in billing time, and any billing costs. Then compare that honestly to what you'd make filling the same slot with a private pay client, even one at a reduced rate. That number is going to give you information, and that's the information you need to be using. If you do decide to take insurance, just be really strategic about which panels you join. Not all of them are worth your time, and adding more panels multiplies your administrative complexity pretty fast. Talk to therapists in your area who are actually on those panels. Although we can't legally ask what reimbursement looks like in the practice, you can get a general sense for how the billing process works, whether they would sign on to that insurance company again, and overall just how satisfied they are working with that insurance company. That kind of peer intel is more valuable than anything on a fee schedule. You could also consider a hybrid model. You don't have to go all in on insurance or refuse it entirely. A lot of therapists I know build something really sustainable by holding a handful of insurance slots, which provides access and helps fill their caseload, while the majority of their private practice is private pay. And that balance can work really well for the long haul. There's a little bit of a caveat that I do want to put in that, which kind of extends into a different conversation around out of network benefits. But if you are paneled with an insurance company, let's just say you're paneled with Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's a very popular one in my area. If you are paneled individually with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you have a client who wants to pay you your private pay rate, but maybe is hoping to submit it because they have out of network benefits that are better than their in network benefits. Because you're paneled in network, your clients cannot submit for out of network benefits for that specific insurance company. So it's kind of a weird little caveat. I guess it makes sense if you think about it because you are paneled. And so they really want you to be seeing those clients in network. Obviously, there are things like in network deductibles versus out of network deductibles that could make a client make that decision to see somebody out of network rather than in network. But just something to keep in mind when choosing the insurance company that you'd like to panel with if you're going for that hybrid model. If you're currently on panels and you're feeling the strain, I want you to hear this very clearly. You're allowed to leave. You can close to new insurance clients. You can phase out a panel over time. You don't have to do it all at once, and doing it isn't abandoning your values around access. It's making a business decision that allows you to keep practicing at all. A burned out therapist isn't better for anyone. And one more thing worth exploring as an alternative to insurance is the sliding scale structure. A lot of private pay therapists hold a limited number of reduced fee slots for clients who genuinely can't afford full rates. And that's a really great way to maintain access as a value while setting your own terms and protecting the financial health of your practice overall. It's certainly not a perfect solution to a broken system, but it's a real option that works for a lot of people. All right, let me bring this together before we get to our closing segment. We talked obviously a lot today about the gap between insurance reimbursement and private pay, how significant it is, about 36% less per session for the same work, and the hidden costs on top of that, billing time, admin time, clawback risk, the loss of clinical autonomy, the pressure to take on unsustainable caseloads, making the real cost even higher than the numbers suggest. The current policy environment means that there's less protections for therapists and clients alike right now than there was supposed to be. And you have real options as a therapist in private practice. You can be fully private pay. You can use a hybrid model. You can use a sliding scale structure. You can be out of network. You can provide out of network courtesy billing. All of those paths are perfect if they are what works for you. All of them require you to be clear eyed about what you're building and to build fully in that direction. But you deserve to have the full picture before you make that call. You're not obligated to absorb the cost of a broken system. You really are allowed to build something sustainable. Before we move into our closing segment, I want to give a quick word about my two resources because they're both genuinely relevant to what we just talked about. The first is my private practice launch kit, which walks you through all of the business decisions that go into building a financially sustainable practice, including how to think about your fee structure and whether and how to approach insurance. Everything is in one place, so you don't have to piece it together from 100 different sources, Googles, YouTubes, etc. And the link for that will be in the show notes. And HQ is my private community for therapists and private practice, where we have monthly consult calls, weekly social media prompts, expert trainings, a full resource library, and a custom GPT to help with admin and marketing. It's the place where we dig into decisions just like this one together with real support and real people who get it. And I'm also going to link that right in the show notes for you. Okay, we have made it to Therapist in the Threads, my favorite part of the show. This post that we're going to dive into today is from r/therapist about 5 months ago. The person is asking 3 questions really. Is dealing with insurance really the headache people say it is? Has it been worth it for keeping your schedule full and your income needs met? And if you stopped accepting insurance, why did you? And they do add some context. They had gotten comments on a previous post saying that insurance kept their schedule full and that in today's economy, being paneled is a huge factor in getting and keeping clients. But they're also hearing from therapists who are actively transitioning away. So they're trying to figure out who to believe and which path to take, essentially. I really love this post because it is the exact tension that we were just sitting in together as we talked about this. The comments are truly all over the map, which honestly feels pretty true to real life here. One person said they only stay on about 3 panels, the ones that aren't a pain to deal with, plus one of the main local Medicaid ones because of laws in their state that actually prohibit private pay for Medicaid clients. Which is really important to know, by the way. There is a real legal consideration depending on where you practice. And they said that while private pay is harder to build from scratch, once those clients are established, most of them are willing to follow you out of network if the relationship is there. Obviously, Medicaid being the exception to that. Then another commenter went in a completely different direction and said, yes, it was a total headache. Companies paying 90 days late, reimbursement as low as $25 a session with some plans, refusal letters, stalling, paperwork rejections, and yet they said they felt like they couldn't survive without being on most of the major plans. The last comment is the one that I keep coming back to because I hear that feeling from so many therapists. The sense that insurance is the only thing standing between them and an empty caseload. And I understand where that comes from, but I also think it's worth examining because sometimes that belief is based on real market conditions, and sometimes it's based on fear that hasn't fully been tested. The therapists who stay on panels, they resent because they're terrified of losing clients, and the therapist who thoughtfully builds a hybrid practice with a strong referral network, those are 2 very different situations, even if they start from the same fear in the same place. What I'd want to say to the person who wrote this post is the answer is genuinely going to depend on your market, your niche, how established you are, and what you're willing to build. There's no universal right answer, but go in with your eyes open. Do the math on what insurance actually costs you before you decide it's the only way. All right, my friends, that is a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a therapist friend who is wrestling with the age-old insurance question. It really does help for more people to find the show. I'll be back next week. Until then, take care of yourselves and your practices, and I will see you then.